I think we're in the cycle of believing that there's a shortage, and it's a short-term shortage. But what we've shown in the past is IT has had the ability to evolve over time and go back and evolve those skills of the people who are there.
This is a Security Weekly production. Security Weekly is a resource of Cyber Risk Alliance.
The Cybersecurity Collaborative and Google Chrome Enterprise is proud to present CISO Stories. Each week, CISO Stories takes a deep dive on security leadership with one of the contributors to my latest book, the #1 best-selling CISO Compass, Navigating Cybersecurity Leadership Challenges with Insights from Pioneers, as well as from other top CISOs and cybersecurity thought leaders. Listen to previous CISO Stories episodes at securityweekly.com/CSP. The Cybersecurity Collaborative is a unique membership community enabling cybersecurity leaders to work together in a trusted environment. To learn more, visit securityweekly.com/CSC or visit cyberleadersunite.com. I am your host, Todd Fitzgerald, and this week we welcome Ralston Simmons, CISO at William Blair.
I think the cybersecurity field has just been a godsend to folks looking for excitement and joy in the next phase of what is IT and what is IT as it takes over the rest of the business. And so I majored in computer information systems and business administration in college, and really my focus wasn't to build computers every day. It was really to make computers useful for businesses and make them more successful. And then when it came to security, it was kind of the next phase of how to not just play with the latest security toys, but really how do we protect all of our business components. Our people, our technology, our processes from hackers who would do them harm. And so just the challenge of looking at that after having been involved in a lot of new technologies with regards to IT, and really looking at the growth of information security, cybersecurity, data privacy as it evolved, and being on the cutting edge was just a really exciting time for me.
Yeah, I mean, and no better space to see all the technology changes than the security field.
Absolutely. And the fact that every new technology needed to be secured, whether we called it security or not, was probably the biggest impetus for me getting and staying in information and cybersecurity today.
So today we're talking, about the talent shortage that we've had out there, and your focus is on leveraging the talent that we already have. So what do you mean by that?
So I think we all believe we have a talent shortage within cybersecurity. And a lot of times when I talk about different topics, I always go back to kind of the beginning of IT in the corporate world. And we are having similar issues as we did in IT. We started with mainframes and we needed mainframe talent. So we went to colleges and we built a pipeline. We brought classes and cohorts of college students in to train them on mainframes because they wouldn't get that training in a college. They wouldn't have the opportunity to do so. Then we moved to client server and we went, are college students being trained in client server? No, but there are folks out in the industry who have that experience or who are learning it, and we need that experience now in order to capitalize on the immediate growth. Then we can build in grabbing college students, training them in client server technologies as well. Then we moved to the web. Same thing. We went to who has experience in the web, who has experience that we can utilize today because we have a shortage. And then we can go back and we can train groups of college students. And so I think we're in the cycle of believing that there's a shortage, and it's a short-term shortage. But what we've shown in the past is IT has had the ability to evolve over time and go back and evolve those skills of the people who are there. As a former mainframe programmer who went through all the retraining, I think that helped to sustain a lot of careers. But I think as we look at security, we also look in three different areas for talent. We look at evolving skills of existing technical folks. We look at career pivots where folks who are trained in other disciplines can be brought into the cybersecurity fold, because it's not just technology to be successful. And then we also look at the internship. So this is a step before the new college graduate, but this is really the intern program where we get to introduce college students and even high school students, depending on the opportunity, or folks who are looking to get into the security world, just the extent to which security is really much bigger than what you may see in the movie Sneakers or the latest James Bond or other movies that are out there. It's really a much bigger eye. So there are sources that are not that people don't think of as being traditional, but they really are. It's really making the most of them with a different mindset.
So, that's interesting that you talk about the transition of IT and how we've adapted over the years. And I remember with the Y2K stuff, which doesn't seem that long ago to some of us, but when we look back, Y2K was really 23 years ago. And I remember when we needed to have code changed, and we had code that was written in assembler, and there were people that were coming off of retirement that were going back into the industry because there was a big shortage of assembler coders, and this stuff needed to be changed, but nobody knew how to do assembler. And I also was there, through that transition of mainframe to client server, and I've forgotten that discussion already. That we had to train up the mainframe programmers to client server, and I remember people saying, "Well, are they ever really going to be able to shift from a mainframe mentality to learn this client server stuff?" But that's what companies did, and it sounds like we're in that same transition now.
Oh, absolutely. As a former mainframe assembler programmer, my skills were hot in demand, even though during Y2K, even though client server had started to take over. But you're right. We had opportunities to bring back retirees or other folks who moved away from the day-to-day rigor of the industry to something that was very targeted, very specific, but where their skills were absolutely in demand. And so I've often talked about how teams are built around key players who perform great functions. I'm a big Chicago Bulls fan, so when I think about all the championship teams, you had scorers, you had defensive specialists, you had shooters, and nobody was really required to be two or three of the others. And so when we look at our teams, the ideal is that we have all Michael Jordans on our team. But the fact of the matter is, maybe there's somebody who's really, really good at documenting controls. Maybe they're really, really good at thinking through and walking through risks. Maybe they're really good at forensics and really digging into technology or investigations or threat intel, but they may not be good at presenting that to the executives or even a broader team. And so when I look at that, I go, well, we keep looking for the superstars and then say there's a shortage, but really, do we really have a superstar defender, a superstar forensics, a superstar threat intel specialist, a superstar risk or control specialist who can play that role? And then our search can then be for someone to support that team or that team member, or even cross-train between them in terms of their career development as well. So I think we just need to look at our teams as being a team of people with individual skills as rather than needing superstars.
I love that, because I know when I was writing the CISO Compass book, I devoted a chapter that I call workplace multi-generational workforce dynamics. And it really involved two different dimensions. One on the personality preferences side, like the Myers-Briggs, DISC profile, Enneagram stuff. And then the other side on the differences between the generations and how we approach work. And it's really that soft side, but understanding that we all have different gifts and we have different interests. And some people want to go down the rabbit hole and research things, and other people want to look at the bigger picture. And if we got everybody that was just like us, we would fail because we need all these different disciplines. You might have somebody on the team, like you said, that likes to write, and you have plenty of developers that don't want anything to do with writing. And so, I love that perspective.
Yeah, I when I talk about career pivoting, this comes from successful team building in the past, right? And there are things that you really have to sit down and think about. What skill do you really need, right? So if you're building a security awareness program, you really don't need somebody who's a specialist in the security lingo, because that's a limited group of people who are probably doing something else. But you do need somebody who's really good at marketing, who's really good at speaking in public, who's really good at writing quick, meaningful, short, and concise documents or tips and tricks. They're thinking more creativity. They've got the pulse on how does the changing demographics of the company, how do they want to learn? How do they learn? How do they pick up new skills? How do they pick up new talents? How do they get the messaging across maybe in a slightly different way, right? Because now we've moved from pick up the phone and call the help desk to send an email, right? Or text messaging if that's allowed in your company. Or just I'm looking at my screen all day long. That's where I get all of my knowledge from. But those skills are out there. And when you start looking at the career pivoting, we're used to looking at IT and saying, hey, a network guy might be a great technical preventive tool specialist. So move from being a network manager or a network admin to administering firewalls and DLP tools and some logging tools, some of those tools that are out there. Some of your application architecture folks can move over to security architecture, right? They already have the core concept of what is architecture, right? It's really just applying it to the security industry and the mindsets. You've got folks in risk management and internal audit who can move over and be your GRC specialist, right? They've spent, several years recommending appropriate controls, and now they're actually on the other side seeing how do we implement these controls? Do they really work? How do we modify them for our particular industry? Legal is a great one. People hear me talk about legal as being a side of security, and they go, I don't understand what you mean. And I go, well, think about that for a minute. all the regulations weren't created by security people. The regulations were created by lawyers and government. So who's used to interpreting governmental regulations? Your legal departments, your compliance teams. And so when you look at security and how that applies, or who's used to looking at your vendor contracts for indemnification and other legal requirements, they're already in the contract. So for them to understand, hey, here's a few more requirements as it relates to security and privacy, they already understand how that mindset works. And so those tools are already there. And so again, when you think about converting, one of my most successful conversions was a person who was a project manager, very much a marketing specialist, into a head of security awareness. And that was probably one of the greatest successes on my teams, is that she took the role and really ran with it because it was a growing topic. It was really interesting. She got to really use all of her talent and skills to build up that function. And so the career pivoting helps because the talent already exists and you're probably already using them as a part of your program. They're just not on your team. So it is a source of bringing folks onto your team.
The article this podcast is based upon can be viewed in the best-selling cybersecurity leadership book, CISO Compass, Navigating Cybersecurity Leadership Challenges with Insights from Pioneers. So I think that's great because we do need all these disciplines, and it's great you mentioned marketing because it's probably the one area that we don't have enough of within the security organizations, and we could use a lot more marketing to actually craft those messages right. So how do you attract and convince people to say, hey, you should come over from legal, or you should come over from application development and come into the security team? Or are they coming to you? What's the mechanism to bring these people over?
So again, there's nothing new under the sun, right? I think back to my mainframe days, and there were rotational programs put in place where auditors would come into IT would go into finance would go into audit, and there were always these rotational functions. Even within IT, there were applications. You sat in the computer room, you worked on the database team, you worked on the help desk, where you really understood all of the functions related. And so if those rotational programs don't exist in your organization, absolutely create something related to that. The other is, if you can't create a formal rotational program, make it informal. Make it between one or two departments. Hey, I would like a marketing specialist to be assigned to security/IT for a period of 6 to 9 months, where we can move programs along, make sure we're doing what we need to do to get that person's skill set and awareness up, but actually get all of the marketing that we correctly noted we need in place. And then that gives them the opportunity to experience what's happening within security. It also gets the security team and the various members to understand the marketing side of things. So, we tend to think very black and white and hard and fast, zeros and ones. But then sometimes marketing is all about, well, we can't really say it like that. We have to say it in a slightly different way. Or here is our company brand. So how about we reword this in a way that's more in line with our company brand, as opposed to the industry, kind of broader industry term. And then the other is really working with specific individuals to give them an opportunity, right? So we have a lot of DEI and a lot of employee skill set development, learning and development programs that I think are always kind of targeted to getting you to the advanced level of your particular discipline, but we don't focus much on the broader areas of saying, hey, if you eventually want to be a CFO, you might want to experience IT, you might want to experience HR, you might want to experience accounting, you might want to experience these different areas so you have an understanding, a well-rounded understanding of how money is needed and funds are needed within a firm. I think security is kind of the same way. I think we say, hey, can I get a lawyer to, hey, you seem to be really interested in the security focus, or you really did a good job on this contract. Can I route other things to you? What kind of future education are you looking into? There's plenty of, one of the most common additional educational pieces for IT and security folks is actually getting a JD. That sounds really odd, but it used to be getting an MBA, right? And now it's more of a JD because there's so much on the legal interpretation rules that's almost a requirement now.
It's interesting you say that, because it's, when you look back on your career, and I've told this to several people now, I have very few regrets. I really have very few regrets. Everything is kind of, happens as it's happened, and I've been happy with that. But the one regret I have is I was looking, and this is almost 20 years ago, I was looking into getting a JD in health IT law. And not that I ever wanted to practice law, but I thought that, I was very involved in the healthcare security side of things. I thought, well, this, there's a lot around privacy and things like that. I think it'd be good to get that law degree. And I didn't do it because it was going to cost about $100,000 at the time, and it didn't go fast. And if I was going to spend $100,000 on something, it needed to go fast. So I didn't do it, and I didn't know if I'd get the usage out of it, at that point in my career, because I was mid-career. And I didn't think I'd get the use out of it. And I look back on it, and I wish I would have done that. That's the one thing I wish I'd have taken the time. I mean, I have my MBA, I did all that stuff, but now I think I would advise people, go get your JD, even if it doesn't mean you're going to practice law, but there's so much around privacy and all of that to understand that I think a JD would be great. I worked for an organization. We developed, I love to hear you say the rotational program, because we developed one where you had to spend 6 months in internal audit, security operations, governance, risk and compliance, and 6 months on a red team. And the cool thing about it was, what we designed is, at the end of that, we let the employee pick where they wanted to go. And he couldn't say, I don't want to work in audit for 6 months. that wasn't a choice, right? And some people may choose to go there. But it gave everybody that that grounding of seeing the other areas. And so then when you work with those other areas, you're so much more grounded. And I just think we just don't do enough of that in our organizations.
Yeah, I agree. I actually have to give credit to Jason Whitty and Fred Kwong for kind of solidifying that whole rotational issue for me. And when I think about our interns, right, we talk about colleges and getting folks who are graduating, but for those who have intern programs, that's really the pipeline. And one program that actually my son was in actually held several of these, they call them So You Want to Be in Fill in the Blank program. And they would take an entire day and say, so you want to be in medicine. And they would take an entire day, go to a hospital, and meet with everyone from the CEO of the hospital all the way to, the greeters at the front door, right? What used to be I think the candy stripers.
Mm-hmm.
And so they talked to a phlebotomist, they talked to anesthesiologists, they talked to the surgeons, they talked to the nurses and the LPNs, and they talked to folks within the medical program. And the most common comment that came out of all of those events was, I didn't know there were so many different roles to play in medicine or in engineering or in construction or in oil and gas, whatever it is. And so one of the things that I like with the internship programs is I look at that as the opportunity to say, you may have gone into it because you had a relative or somebody you knew who was a forensics expert or who was a programmer, whatever it was. But I think this is a great opportunity to introduce the interns to say, let me show you all of security. Let me show you GRC. Let me show you policies. Let me show you controls. Let me show you forensics. Let me show you firewalls and data protection. But it's also the opportunity to say, let me show you threats. Let me show you how an actual phishing campaign works against you. Let me show you why we tell people what to do. And so then you're starting to get into the personal side, the psychology, the why it's so important to have these same ideas at work and at home. And in the rest of your life, you can show them how, hacking a Jeep Grand Cherokee works and why that's important to a banking firm or even a manufacturing company, of why we should be thinking about all of those little details in security. And I think it gives them a great opportunity to see all of security and then say, wow, I think I like this better. I think I was able to touch that. I thought I was going to be playing with, cool tools during my internship, but when I actually had to stand up and give a presentation about what is multi-factor authentication, and I really had to understand it and own it, wow, that was really significant, because if nobody understood it, it doesn't matter what the technology does, nobody's using it. Right. And so being able to put together the total picture of security, I think, is incredibly valuable. And it introduces them to what the real world is. Right.
I think that's great. And it reminds me of the, take your child to work day things that we do with kids in a smaller scale. And I know it started off as take your daughter to work day. And I remember my daughter I was working at the time for a pharmaceutical firm, and they did things like made slime and stuff like that, but they got to talk to all these different scientists, and she ended up in a career in science and got a couple degrees and was an ICU nurse during COVID, and went into microbiology and biochemistry. Those are two words that I barely knew how to spell in school. And so, but it's planting those seeds. And I love that we have people like yourself that are doing that in the cybersecurity space. Well, Ralston, this has been great talking with you. I could talk for a long time about this topic. I think we need to get more people into this space and see that it's more than just getting a hoodie on your first day of employment. That's not what the job is about. And so what final advice would you give to emerging CISOs, current CISOs, experienced CISOs as they're trying to fill in their pipeline?
Probably the biggest piece of advice is continue to look at all of the pipeline sources, some of which are right under your nose in your own organization. Think about the skills that you really need, and think about, do you really need a body to accomplish something short term, or do you really need a team member who will fill in the gaps and be a true team player to support your organization? Because I'll bet at least 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 are already in your organization and are looking to make the next step in their career, or the next step up as an intern, or the next step over from pivoting from another role within your company.
That's excellent advice. Thanks a lot, Ralston.
Yeah, thank you.
Are you constantly thinking about how to keep your enterprise as secure as possible? Get to know Chrome Enterprise, the browser that will secure your organization without the added expense and complexity of additional browsers. Its simplified management features will free up your team to focus on critical security tasks that can be overlooked because of time and attention it takes to manage other solutions. Don't settle for a browser that compromises your organization. Visit securityweekly.com/Chrome now to start protecting your organization like never before.